Ryan Bowles, Aussie, Sri Lankan, rock climber, soon to be dad. How does it feel to be a podcaster?
It's, my second time round, so it feels good to be back, I'll say that much.
And what made you stop the first time?
Probably because of lack of direction, like, I felt confused in purpose and where I was going with things. When I first started, it was 2017, 2018. Now looking back, I should have just continued it and morphed that into the thing that I'm doing. That's hindsight. That was early days still in podcasting. I know you were before that, but, like, that was still early. I just listened to David Shands this morning, and I think he started in 2018 and then stopped and came back. So, yeah, lack of direction, not my true purpose.
When you're saying that in hindsight, you should have kept that going, why would you like to keep that going? Primarily because if you're saying there was a lack of direction, how would you have stuff out, if you didn't know
Yeah.
what you wanted to put
I
out?
think just reps. You get better in the reps. We've been sort of before with our current podcast, just reminding ourselves, no one's going to watch this. No one's going to hear it. Like, it's more like working on us than it is working for others. Even though there are, it's low amount of views and listens right now, people are listening. But ultimately, like in the beginning, it's not tens and thousands and so forth. So it's working on us and then it will work for us.
It's a really good way to look at it. When you look back at your entrepreneurial journey, what does that synopsis look like? And what are things that stand out for you that might not be in your bio?
Ooh, nice. Okay, a couple of questions. What does the synopsis look like? I think it looks like jumping from like one stepping stone to the next. Each of the stepping stones getting smaller as I jump, not bigger. Most people think, oh, they get bigger because you get better. I think they get smaller because I want to do it better, if that makes sense. Each business or each project, I want to refine it. I want to launch it better. I want to impact more people. I want to have better systems, better teams. And that's probably part of perfectionism. Call it what you want, OCD. You know how it is, right? Like, you want a certain level of brand
Yeah.
element. So that's
Yeah.
probably how I have thought and looked at my journey.
Mm.
To give people some context, I've been doing like the online thing. Like, dude, I remember, you'd remember as well. For me, it was MSN. That was like the first online experience with someone across the world that I didn't know, that I was like, what's happening right now? And then it was MySpace, like 2000. And I was sending bulletins. I was putting bulletins out there on MySpace, which, people would read and then come to a party or an event. It's just been an evolution from there.
What was the biggest learning? I mean, you spoke about sales there very briefly. What was that biggest learning? Because being on stage is just something that now I'm very grateful for that. I was in the elocution teams and in the debate teams when I was in school, and then going and I was in the band, I was a DJ. So those kind of skills, I never really thought, even my parents
Yeah.
didn't think. They were like, what are you doing? Like, you should be studying. But now it is one of the things that comes so naturally to me because I've been on stage so often. What are the things that you've gained as a result of being in the band, following your passion, I suppose?
Yeah, huge. I think the sales side, it comes down to people. Like, if you looked at the merch stands, yes, we had the best presented merch stand because of the brand element and how we presented. But if you took that away and you just put a table and some t-shirts on it, I would sell people 10 times over every other band, because they would sit there or they'd put their girlfriend on or whatever and didn't care and just expected t-shirts to sell. But I was invested in every single person.
And you've taken that, invested in every single person into a lot of things that you've done, just thinking about it now because you've just said it, but thinking about your journey as well and what I know of it, you've taken that into the other businesses as well as the podcast right now. But let's talk about going from that band into the online space. What was the big shift into getting into the online space and then selling something that maybe you never thought you would get into?
So selling something I never thought I'd get into would be like information, courses, coaching. I created a digital graphic design agency because of the band. Like, we didn't have money to buy artwork for t-shirts and posters and CDs. And so I like went and got myself a YouTube degree, like every other good graphic designer, and studied the crap out of other people on YouTube. And I put together this agency and ended up hiring dudes in the band. And we built this little, like, mecca of graphic design within our little family. So that graphic design business like carried on from about 2011 till about 2018. So a good 7 or 8 years there. In between that process, I launched like a online, I guess, personal brand clothing company, you could call it. We sold like sunglasses, we sold watches and different pieces. And so we would manufacture in China and we'd sell online and through market stalls. That lasted about 18 months and I sold to my business partner. And then from there, people started asking me in the graphic design space, like, how do you get leads? How do you get clients? And we all know what that leads to, right? It's like, oh, maybe I can teach this stuff. I've built a decent agency. Maybe I can teach that. I don't know if you remember the Russell Brunson era, but I was just getting like retargeted. I was going to say spammed. I was getting retargeted so heavily. And I had no idea who Russell Brunson was. So I was like, this book must be a scam. And I eventually bought it. And I think that was the unlock, that I could turn knowledge into helping people with like exponential scale. And so that was my first course. I created a program called Create or Die, and there was a movement behind that as well. Like, if we're not creating something, we're dying on the inside. And I taught all these artists how to get leads, get clients, charge more for what they're worth.
So cool. And I wonder when you have these conversations, whether that dawns on you in terms of the amount of reps that have been put in different areas of entrepreneurship.
If I think about it too long, I come to the point of thinking I should be further ahead than where I am. So I don't think about it too much.
I think that's a really interesting thing, because right now I'm writing my second book on AI and on AI adoption in particular. And what I'm seeing the most is AI is this cool magic trick. And everyone seems to think that they're proficient in AI, but they are seeing this magic trick and they can replicate the magic trick, but it's not really growing the business. It's not really doing anything for the business. And part of the book is, how do we bring back wisdom that has been around for ages, that somehow through the last 300-400 years we've destroyed through colonialism and other things. And there's some insane subjects that we don't even, topics and perspectives that we've not heard of. And one of them is how colonialism has brought this idea that it's not enough. Whatever we have is not enough. We have to be faster, quicker, better. I'm finding that there's a lot of things that we believe now that has come from what we call the first world. It is not necessarily wisdom. It is just this way of conquering where someone has to lose for you to win. And it's just this underlying thing.
Yeah.
And it's in all of us, fortunately or unfortunately. And being aware of it is like probably the big thing. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's a really important point. And it probably puts us into a lot of depression sometimes and forget where we've come from, as opposed to,
I find that so interesting. Yeah, what you've just mentioned, how it's not necessarily, I mean, you said fortunately, unfortunately, 100% agree. I laughed, for those listening, I laughed as I said it, because I know that there's so many lessons in it, which they're the ones that I'm looking to leverage. I don't want to dwell in that place at all. And at the same time, I'm very content, with where we are, with the family that we have and the lifestyle and the people that we have around us. So there's like this, you got to have that beautiful balance.
So you was talking about knowledge into helping people, how to leverage knowledge into helping people. Through that journey, what is the biggest thing you took away? Like, what is the biggest thing that you teach other people? What is the thing that you might think is just so simple for you, but everyone else goes, oh, what did you just say?
I mean, it probably comes down with the business that we have right now, which for the last number of years has been helping, online coaches grow communities where they can, create far more impact. And they do that by providing their services, And so some of those profound moments are the smallest things, where we might craft, a small idea and that goes inside their community and just blows up. And so I don't have anything necessarily specific, but it would come down to small tactical tweaks there.
You've been helping people build communities for a while, and you're really good at it. In fact, it is evident from your band days and how you spoke about investing in every single person that you've been able to do this. And I think that comes naturally to you. That doesn't come naturally to other people. Like, everyone thinks of building community, but they just don't know how. What are the ways that we should start thinking about that other than invest in every single person? Like, what are the other bits of gold that you can give us to build a community?
Yeah, great question. I think and we haven't touched on it just yet, but with the current project that we've launched, we're dealing with something at the moment that's growing faster than we've ever seen before. And it's my wife and I at the helm, and we don't have the time in the day or the fingers on a hand to be able to connect with each person. It's impossible. So knowing that that's impossible, how can we still connect and build this community? And I think it's just being intentional with the one. I think it really is. And by being intentional with one person publicly, whether that is whatever your forum is, whether it's, a Facebook group or whether it's an Instagram comment, these public places, a YouTube comment, being intentional with one shines a light to so many others to say that this person cares. And I think there's an understanding, and like, we're dealing with a heavy topic, which we'll get into, but we're dealing with a heavy topic, people are hurting, and there still is an understanding that, hey, we can't serve everybody, respond to every post and every comment. It's impossible. But by investing in one at a time to our capacity, they then in turn invest in others. And like, the support has like grown through the roof, where we'll wake up and, man, we haven't been able to do anything overnight, but there's people just loving and supporting others. It's just been unbelievable. So it comes back to the one, invest in one. And what's the idea? Paying it forward. It's almost like that.
Let's talk about, firstly, why the movement, and then what made you think of the podcast, and then how did that all unfold?
Kaylee and myself, my wife and I, we both lost a parent 11 years ago. So when we got together after a game of touch football and started chatting for the first time, you get into those questions about family and values and so forth. And she said, she'd lost her mum. And I was like, I've lost my dad. And that happened to be just 4 months within each other. It was an interesting one when I was, looking for, a wife. Is like, I wonder if they'll understand my grief. And I think, God just placed me with somebody who understood that so perfectly. And so that's why the movement, because we've walked that road and we think it can be done better. In terms of the podcast and how the idea came about, you and I had a chat. I was like, I want to start a podcast. I'm unsure on what. And you asked me the question, well, what could you talk about all day long and be passionate about? And at the time, we spoke about community and this idea of building community. So that was the first initiation. So thanks for kicking that off. We went then on a journey for another 6 months of still questioning, like, is that it? Is that the purpose? And then we felt it drop in our spirit, this idea of grief. And so we were hanging out in Hawaii, kicked back on the beach, if you remember. And Rochelle called us and she was on the bus somewhere, I think. And so that's when I said to you, look, I think we want to do this thing on grief. And you were absolutely for it. We launched the podcast, I think we launched on October 1st. So that's to timestamp this for everybody, 2 months ago. And we launched socials, a week or two before that. So we're only 2.5, 3 months into the journey. But yeah, we've had some pretty cool wins and seen some cool growth, which we're feeling the impact of where that's heading.
When you're looking back at your creation right now, because it went from an idea to a creation, what are the things you took, whether it's from me, and if it is from me, what are those things, and from other people and from yourself that you put into this creation?
Yeah, from you was definitely that question as to like, what can you talk about passionately forever? And just looking back now over 11 years, I've had thousands of conversations, like thousands, because of our bands, primarily with people who would come up to us and say like, man, I lost my mum or brother or pet or whatever. And so like, they were all there in history already. I just didn't know what I was necessarily doing with them. So that from you, that question. Secondly, putting a time for the launch, like a hard black and white date down. So my good buddy Jethro, he's also in filming and podcasting. He's a legend. he was like, well, why don't we get this thing down on the calendar? And so we gave ourselves 30 days to launch, because there's no better timeline than one that's decided. And that was like, we need to get some equipment together, figure out where we're going to film this thing, because we self-record in our home. And it's a podcast. It's 2 hosts, myself and Kaylee, and then we bring guests in as well. And we wanted to launch. So Jethro suggested the idea, why don't you do a launch party? Now, when I heard the term launch party, I thought in person, but what he was meaning was an online launch party. And so I went to going, well, how can I pull some people together and make this a fun event? And how can we make this thing happen? So we launched our podcast in person with there was 20 people. We put together a free offer for those in our friend circle, family circle, to be there or be square.
No, amazing. I think a good launch can really set you up extremely well, and it's a good foundation, and that's why you're getting the results that you're getting. And that's why, even though it's only 2 months since the launch, I'm having this conversation with you, because you've been able to get some really amazing results. So let's talk about the launch. What are the other elements that you put into the calendar that you were like, oh, we need to get these things done?
Yeah, we decided on cadence. So that was a big one. So we've gone for a weekly cadence. At the time, I was thinking, it's either weekly, it's bi-weekly, it's monthly, but there are cadences that are well and truly hotter than that. I haven't reached that point just yet, which might be twice a week, etc. A long form, short form. But cadence, we wanted, obviously, of course, audio, but definitely video. We had to go video 100% from the start on this one. And then we wanted to make sure, and I don't understand podcast algorithms, but I understand social media algorithms. And so the reason why we wanted to bring people together was so that we could do a couple of things. One, we could party and celebrate. 2, we could introduce them to our vision. So we'd have a group of people who are bought in and invested to our journey. 3, so that we could get everybody that was there with a phone in their pocket, playing through the first 3 episodes while they were having a drink and having some food and a laugh. So we launched with 3 episodes. We pre-filmed and launched those on one day. And we had Spotify open on 20 phones. 3 episodes got played on each phone, and then everyone was able to rate the podcast. So we came out of the gates on day 1 with 20 plus ratings on Spotify, 5-star. And then the final thing we did with the public, or the party, was we educated as well. So we wanted to educate the guys, our friends and family, around grief and have some fun with that. So we ran a game using Kahoot and some prizes, that they could win from that. And they all walked away having a laugh, having some fun, learning something, and also supporting what we were doing. We had some clear ideas in that. We had scarcity, that there was 20 people only available, like allowed to come. So you had to get your RSVP back. There was prizes to be given out, so there was incentive. And then we had a hard date, which was the urgency. So we had a 7-day window, get back to us here, otherwise you can't make it. So that was just the offer that we put out. And then the final thing that we did once they'd RSVP'd was we sent them an unlisted YouTube video of the first episode, so that they could listen ahead of time, so they could come with context and also questions to add to the conversation at the party. So that was the public party.
I love it. The thing I loved the most was introducing them to our vision. A lot of the times, as the entrepreneur, you have this vision that's just in your head, and we expect everyone else to know what it is. And from the gate, from the outset, you made this a point that you wanted to introduce them to your vision. And I encourage everyone to do that, including myself. It's more of a lesson for me, really. So what did you do? What did you learn? And how would you do it differently if you had to do it differently the next time?
We were very just organic about the way that we shared the vision. So, we didn't structure together, a presentation or a speech or anything like that. We had a few things that we wanted to make sure we communicated. But when you tell a group of close family and friends that you want to reach, 1 million people and help them process grief, that can be quite overwhelming if people aren't necessarily in the entrepreneurial space or, the social space either. So that was, the reception was kind of like, awesome, we're cheering you on, but, that's just how it was. And that's cool, because even for me, as we cast that vision before we even had a follower on Instagram or a listener on our podcast, we cast that vision, it's hard to believe until you start. That's how we're wired as humans. We believe because we see, but ultimately that's not what faith is. A mentor of mine, Myron, he says that our eyes provide lies. He's a Christian as well. And so the Bible comes and says that faith comes from hearing, right? And so the reason why we believe so many lies is because we can't see the fruit or the thing in full completion before it's eventuated. We just can't. We've got to put one foot in front of the other. We've got to start building. We've got to be networking. We've got to be connecting. So yeah, we cast that vision. We had no followers and I'm just looking at it. I'm like, it was big when we wrote it down. Now it doesn't feel so big because we've taken the first step and we're starting to see that traction.
I've been talking about how powerful the auditory sense is to every other sense for 11 years now.
A decade. Yeah. Right.
And no one gets it until I say that's why parents sing to their kids and talk to their kids even before they're born. And that's when it lands.
That's awesome.
Because, and again, it takes time, right? It's like people don't get it until you give them a very simple way to see the truth, whatever that truth might be. And your podcast is talking about something that everyone will go through, whether we like it or not. We're going to go through grief, whether it is parents, whether it's pets, family. I've recently spoken to a few people that have just lost their kids, which is just so heartbreaking to even be within their energy space because they're hurting so much. Let's talk about grief. You wanted to impact these million people. What is the vision and how would you like it to be different from the way it's currently being done?
It's so good. And to be completely truthful, we're not sure just yet. We're working this thing out as we go. And so currently, we're just building community. We're building an audience. We're starting to get to know the people in our space. We're building contacts. We're starting to interview people. We're diving deep in that just so we can understand more. Even though we've walked through it, we just really want to dive deep and understand a whole lot more, which has been really helpful. And also it's been quite therapeutic as well, which has been a beautiful side effect. In terms of how we think we can do it better, I mean, coming from the Christian viewpoint, when we both went through grief, the support system wasn't necessarily the greatest. I don't think people just in general are trained up for how to deal with someone going through grief. And that's not anybody's fault. It's just how it is. So we're looking to bring education to that so that people can feel like as a supporter, they can help somebody through grief. And then as somebody going through grief as well, you've got some steps ahead of you, things to trial, because it's just different for everybody. There's no linear process. There's no, 10-step playbook. It's different. And so it is, a bit of touch and feel, just see what works for me and how it comes off. So we ultimately would like to build a global community that is not only supportive of each other, but then is resourced like a Netflix for grief. So it's resourced in such a way that at a low cost, you can get high access to a variety of different resources, along with in-person meetups, online meetups, and then, experts, all sorts of things along the way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. What made you start and what did you pick up and what did you listen to, just so that I am aware?
I was looking for, this was before we'd launched the podcast. Actually, it was after we'd launched, my apologies, because that was mid-October. So we had probably 4 podcasts better. It's been a space that I dabbled in and stopped. So it's been years since. And so I wanted to tune into anything helpful. So that's what I went searching for. I was like, what's Ron's got? Who's he spoken to? What conversations he had? There was a panel, there was some interviews. A couple of different things in there that I was like, this is gold. I was listening to the panel while on the plane, and I believe there was 4 guests. Can't remember their names. All had varying podcasts. And so there were quite a few nuggets in there on that panel. You spoke maybe 10 words in the whole episode, everybody else was just inputting. And then there was another one while I was driving through Melbourne. I can't remember. You were speaking with a woman. I believe she touched on grief as well.
That's cool. Really interesting to understand listeners, because that's the big thing about podcasters is we don't get this direct feedback
Totally.
that is so valuable.
And to tie off on that thought, I don't have a commute. So like we work from home. So like if we leave here, it's to exercise, and it's often to exercise together. So we don't podcast. So when I get time alone or transport time, that's when I'll do it, or in the gym.
What do you do before the recording to prepare? What do you do during the recording?
So we recorded an episode together, but we wanted a bit more of a conversational, just anecdotes, story, and takeouts from personal experiences. So a great website is called answerthepublic.com,
Yep.
I believe. You plug in a keyword of your topic in there, and it will pull up all of Google's search rankings based on that topic. So the what, how, why questions that people continually type, the search volume. And so that gives you a real idea as to like what's hot and what's not. So we were flicking through that. When you've got 200,000 plus versus 400, it's like, let's not talk about the 400 topic. Let's talk about the thing that our audience is wanting to hear. So that's one. We've got a bunch of, books on the topic of grief that we love to reference and look for ideas in. Then there's continually, reels, YouTube videos, podcasts that we're listening to, that we're drawing ideas from. And then we listen to our audience, as well. We ask them, what are things that you would like to hear or have discussed? And so there are a couple of the places that we pull ideas from. When it comes to filming, like, dude, we just film on my iPhone 14. It's a single camera shot. We've just got these 2 Rode pod mics, and we just hit record and go for it. Generally 30-minute episode. We've had only 2 guests on so far. We've wanted to go for in-person guests. I'm the director and producer. I'll hit stop, and from that point, it's literally saving the file down, bouncing the clips out into a G Drive folder. So video will get airdropped from phone to laptop and then straight into the G Drive. The 2 audio tracks straight into the raw files. From there, our VA will take that, stitch together the episode, which is a top and tail. The top is just an intro that's cut up based on the pieces that I give him. The transcript that we get from the episode, I'll go and timestamp the pieces that I want in the intro. And this has been a juggle, just for everybody listening. It's been a juggle of like, what can you delegate and what do you hold on to? I think, you can delegate the whole episode and say, you go and cut all the creative, but it depends who you're dealing with. And if your person doesn't know the topic, or like English is a first language, for example, like there's just discrepancies as to like, that wasn't quite a valuable piece, or that didn't really touch on something that we could have touched on. So with the transcript, I'll go on timestamp just by highlighting in a Google Doc. Those bits will get cut for the intro. And then I'll also highlight in 3 other colors for 3 different reels that I want from the episode. And
amazing.
So, yeah, those reels will get cut based on the timestamp. And then I'll give a title for the episode and also a thumbnail for the episodes. The thumbnail just is a screen grab from the episode with like shocked or emotive type faces. And I learned this from Myron, who I mentioned already, a statement with a question. And so the frame for the thumbnail is why, this, then that. So if you start with this, then that, it might be podcasts are hard. That's the this, then that. That's the statement. And if we add a question in that, why podcasts are hard, now becomes something worth clicking on. That's how every thumbnail ends up. He'll bounce out a final export. I'll check it, and we're good to upload.
Amazing. I love this. Thank you so much. I mean, there's so much of gold in all of this. But the thing that stands out for me, especially that you're going through this journey of helping people understand grief, is my recent journey in helping the world understand collaboration and being off the land as opposed to this is my piece of land. And this is a story from a few weeks ago, talking to an Inuit lady, an indigenous to North America. And in the conversation, she said to me, so Ronsley, if you're saying to me that artificial intelligence is going to be the biggest conversation of our lifetime, how does it affect my relative, the beaver? How does it affect my relative, the tree? How does it affect my relative, the bear? And there was the first time I heard that kind of word. She's literally looked at me, this is through Zoom, and said, you've never heard anyone speak like that, have you? I said, no. And she said, well, if we are not giving a voice to those who don't have one, then we might not even consider them in our pursuit of our goals. And that one conversation really blew my mind, because we're always after our goals, not thinking of the damage,
Along
if
the
we are
way.
causing any along the way. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up for you especially is because you and I have these responsibilities where our people and our knowledge have been destroyed by colonialism. We can't run away from that.
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge the fact that it's happened, it's there, and there has been history of our people having this wisdom. And I'm saying this because I bet there must be wisdom under the grief category that we don't know of yet. And I feel like,
Totally.
you exploring that, you and Kaylee exploring that would be so cool, and another way to revere your ancestors and give them a voice. And, a lot of people ask me why I do podcasts, and I'm like, well, the simple reason is my ancestors did not have the opportunity to switch on a mic and say whatever they wanted to say whenever they wanted to say it. So on that note, Ryan, this has been an absolute slice of heaven. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. Thank you for taking your idea and executing on it, because lots of people have great ideas and don't go ahead with it, and executing it in a way that you want to help others and teach. Myself, I've got pieces of things that I'm going to change about my podcast from listening to you, even though, you're only 2 months in. This has been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you, dude, so much. Thank you.